Well, we're going to talk about multiple personality disorder. This is a condition that I suspect many people have heard about in movies or on television shows or whatever. Widely diagnosed, perhaps, or not, but certainly misunderstood. And for the man you're about to meet, Robert Oxnam, it was a secret that he carried with him for 15 years. He's a distinguished scholar. Oxnam has worked with world leaders and business legends, originally diagnosed with 11 alternate personalities. He's whittled them down to 3, A Road to Recovery, that he discusses in his new memoir. It is a book called A Fractured Mind. And I'm joined this morning by Robert Oxnam. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
As I understand multiple personality disorder, this is not a genetic disease. This is not something that you catch. It's not inherited. This is usually something that develops as a way for someone to escape from some kind of very bad memory?
Yes, and that's a really important point. It's not genetic. It's caused by trauma. And in my case, and as I describe it in A Fractured Mind, it emerges because of childhood trauma, emotional, physical, sexual abuse as a young child.
So you want to get away from that, and then these other personalities develop. In your case, 11.
11.
And you didn't know it.
Didn't know it because of the fact that it masks itself. You're hiding from a problem that you can't admit to yourself. So it can take the form of aberrations like rage or alcoholism or blackouts, and it's easy to attribute that to other causes than MPD.
But when these personalities take over, they are distinctly different people, and Robert Oxnam just goes away?
Yes. What happens in its extreme form is that there is a sort of blanking out, and in fact another personality with another name, often another age completely, with another voice emerges.
Which you don't remember when Robert Oxnam comes back.
In its chronic form, that's right. And the goal of therapy, of course, is to understand all of those personalities, is to meet with them all, and then eventually create patterns of understanding and communication in your own head.
Which, as you write about, is you refer to as integration. You bring those other personalities into your main personality. But when you would go away and these other people would take over, how could you reconcile in your own mind the sort of gaps in time?
I attributed them to alcoholic blackouts. That I was drinking a lot in the 1980s.
Right.
People who drink a lot often have blackouts and then can't account for time. So an hour would go by, and I wouldn't know what happened. I'd say blackout.
But
sometimes 3 days.
But as I say, distinguished scholar, I mean, you were running the Asia Society here in New York at the age of 38.
Yeah.
How can you carry that off and not have other people catch on? In a meeting, for instance, could another personality take over?
No, never. There was an unwritten rule inside the structure that when you were in a professional setting, nothing of that sort happened. And so it would happen in transition from intense work to play. Grand Central Station was a key sort of transition point in this whole mechanism.
You would go down there and just and be like a bum in the corner, talking to yourself?
I would be talking to myself, absolutely. Or I would be very active in a set of meetings. 3 hours later, I'd be on a sailboat. My field was China, but I couldn't talk about China. I couldn't remember anything about China when I was on a sailboat.
When you got diagnosed 15 years ago, wasn't there sort of an aha moment? I mean, that explains what's been going on.
No, my first reaction was, this is hogwash. I can't believe this is the diagnosis. I sat in a therapist's office. The therapist said, our time's up. I said, I just got here. He said, I've been talking to somebody for 50 minutes. His name is Tommy, and he's mad at me. And I said, that can't be. And so it took me a couple of weeks before I could even accept that diagnosis.
When you talk about the road to recovery, you've whittled this down to 3 other personalities. One of them is Bobby, a young person who goes rollerblading in Central Park. If you want to avoid this, why not just not go rollerblading? You know it's going to take over when you're out there.
See, we're at a much further point along the line. I know what Bobby's doing, and he knows what I'm thinking. And it's almost like I have a parenting role towards Bobby. Bobby is a late teenager. And part of understanding this is realizing that inside the head of somebody who has this disorder is your own family. And you have to treat them as such, not reject them, not prevent them from doing things, but instead nurture them. So now when he goes rollerblading, I see it as sort of with parental bemusement. I watch Bobby's out there doing his thing, rollerblading for 5 hours, doing his trick of balancing bottles on his head. And he's rather proud of that, and now I can tolerate it. A few years ago, I found it very embarrassing to be discovered out there.
Interesting that you refer to it as family. There's this family here, and then there's family in the way we consider it, which is children, wife, et cetera, et cetera.
I think this is one of the messages in the book that I have in my own head because of the fractured history, a set of personalities that have to be treated as family. But a lot of other people who don't have dissociative disorders also have an internal family. Learning to love yourself is part of the game.
Very interesting. Robert Oxnam, appreciate your being here.